The Galactic Tribunal's detention facility hummed with the low thrum of containment fields, each cell housing the galaxy's most dangerous criminals. In Cell Block 7, however, something unprecedented had occurred. The guards whispered among themselves, their chitinous mandibles clicking in confusion as they observed the occupant of Cell 7 Alpha. Adnan sat cross-legged on the metal floor, his dark eyes closed in meditation. At barely 19 standard years, he appeared impossibly young to the assembled alien species. His black hair fell across his forehead, and despite the circumstances, there was a calmness about him that unnerved even the most hardened tribunal guards. "The human child cannot possibly be the threat our intelligence suggests," growled Commander Vextai, his 6 arms gesturing dismissively. The hegemony officer's scarred carapace bore the marks of countless battles. "Look at him. He's barely out of adolescence by their species standards." Captain Nahal of the Terran Defense Corps stood behind the energy barrier of the adjacent cell, her jaw clenched with barely contained fury. Her auburn hair was matted with dried blood from their capture, and her uniform bore the insignia of humanity's elite military forces. She had watched helplessly as the Tribunal's forces had surrounded them on the mining colony of Kepler 442b, overwhelming them through sheer numbers rather than superior skill. "You don't understand what you're dealing with," she said quietly, her voice carrying across the sterile corridor. "That child has done things that would make your nightmares seem like pleasant dreams." The assembled aliens, representatives from the hegemony, the Crystal Collective, and the Void Touched, exchanged what could only be described as amused glances. To them, humans were a young species barely 3 centuries into interstellar travel. What could one human child possibly have accomplished? "Silence, terrorist!" hissed Ambassador Zhilok of the Crystal Collective, her crystalline form refracting the corridor's harsh lighting. "Your species' propensity for violence is well documented, but we are not fools. This boy will face judgment for his alleged crimes, but first, we must determine if the charges have any merit." High Inquisitor Morden, a being of living shadow from the Void Touched, materialized beside Adnan's cell. His presence seemed to drain the light from the immediate area. "The charges are extensive," he intoned, his voice like whispers from the grave. "Destruction of 3 hegemony battlecruisers, the elimination of the Crystal Collective's mining operation on Terminus 7, the complete eradication of a Void-touched infiltration fleet." His form flickered. Surely these are exaggerations. Adnan's eyes opened slowly, meeting the Inquisitor's gaze without flinching. "Would you like me to explain how I did it?" he asked, his voice carrying a strange mixture of youth and weariness. The alien representatives laughed, or made the closest approximations their species could manage. The idea that this slip of a human could have single-handedly accomplished such feats seemed absurd. "Very well." Commander Vextai clicked his mandibles in amusement. "Let us review your species' history. Perhaps understanding your primitive past will shed light on these ridiculous claims." He activated a holographic projector, preparing to display what he assumed would be a brief overview of human warfare. The first slide appeared, showing a young face that made every alien present freeze in recognition. It was Adnan, but the image was from a battlefield 3 years prior. His face streaked with mud and blood, eyes hollow with the weight of survival. "This," Vextai began, his voice faltering, "is from the Battle of New Sarajevo." The presentation continued, each slide revealing more impossible truths. Images of Adnan at 16, standing alone among the wreckage of hegemony assault mechs. At 17, emerging from the crystal caves of Terminus 7 as mining facilities exploded in sequence behind him. At 18, floating in the debris field that had once been the Void-touched stealth fleet, somehow having survived in the vacuum of space long enough for rescue. The human designation, Ghost of the Outer Rim, the automated system announced, first appeared in Galactic Intelligence Reports 847 standard days ago. Subject demonstrates unprecedented tactical awareness, survival instincts, and adaptive combat capabilities. Psychological profile suggests extensive trauma combined with an almost supernatural ability to turn disadvantageous situations into tactical victories. High Inquisitor Mordoon's shadowy form wavered. "This is impossible. No single being could what?" Adnan stood gracefully, moving to the energy barrier. Could survive being abandoned on a dead world at 16 when your hegemony forces killed my family? Could learn to disable your technology using nothing but scavenged parts and human ingenuity? Could turn your own weapons against you? The young man's voice never rose above a conversational tone, but something in his manner made the temperature in the corridor seem to drop. You want to know how I destroyed 3 battle cruisers? I convinced them to fire on each other. How I eliminated your mining operation? I poisoned your crystal matrices with a compound any human chemistry student could synthesize. Your stealth fleet? I broadcast their exact positions on all frequencies after hacking their own communication arrays. Captain Nahal watched as understanding dawned in the aliens' various forms of expression. These species had conquered worlds through overwhelming technological superiority in numbers. They had never faced an enemy who could turn those very advantages into vulnerabilities. You see, Adnan continued, you made a fundamental error in your assessment. You assumed that because humans are young as a species, we must be primitive, but we've spent our entire evolutionary history fighting impossible odds. We've been the underdogs for so long that we've made it an art form. Commander Vextai's 6 arms trembled as he processed the implications. But you're barely adult by your own species standards. Adnan smiled, and for the first time the expression held no warmth whatsoever. I stopped being a child the day your forces turned my world into ash. Every human you've killed, every colony you've destroyed, you've just been creating more like me. We don't just fight battles, we study them. We learn, we adapt, and we never ever forget. The silence that followed was broken only by the hum of containment fields and the nervous chittering of guards. The question you should be asking, Captain Nahal said quietly, isn't whether Adnan is guilty of those charges. The question is, how many more like him are out there and what are they planning while you waste time here? High Inquisitor Morden was the first to speak, his voice barely above a whisper. Release them, sir? Commander Vextai's mandibles clicked in confusion. Release them both, immediately. The shadow being's form seemed to contract. And send word to the respective fleets, we need to discuss terms. As the containment fields deactivated, Adnan stepped out calmly, followed by Captain Nahal. He paused at the threshold and looked back at his former captors. The thing about humans, he said conversationally, is that we're really quite reasonable. We prefer peace to war, cooperation to conflict, but threaten our families, our homes, our future. He shrugged. Well, then you get to meet the ghost of the Outer Rim. Walking away down the corridor, Captain Nahal fell into step beside him. Think they'll actually negotiate? Adnan considered this for a moment. They will. Fear's a powerful motivator, and they've just realized that humanity's greatest weapon isn't our technology or our numbers. He glanced back at the still frozen alien representatives. It's that we never stop learning how to turn their strengths into our advantages. As they reached the exit, the sound of hurried communications filled the air behind them. 3 galactic powers suddenly desperate to arrange peace talks with a species they had underestimated. The ghost of the Outer Rim had struck again, and this time he hadn't even needed to fire a shot.